It was their only hope. If they could reach open ground, perhaps the survivors could regroup, make a fighting retreat. But Skanderbeg had anticipated this. Albanian infantry blocked the northern outlet, forming a wall of spears and determination that the exhausted Ottomans couldn't break. As afternoon faded toward evening, the massacre continued. Albanian forces showed no mercy because they knew mercy would be wasted if they faltered. If they let the Ottomans escape and regroup, this entire sacrifice would mean nothing. Every enemy soldier who escaped was one who would return with reinforcements, so they fought with cold efficiency, methodically destroying the trapped army section by section. Then darkness fell, bringing with it cold mountain rain that turned the valley floor into mud mixed with blood. Fighting in pitch darkness should have favored neither side, but Skanderbeg had prepared for this too. Albanian warriors knew this terrain intimately. They could navigate by touch and memory even in complete darkness. The Ottomans, strangers in an alien landscape, were blind and helpless. Around midnight, Skanderbeg ordered the final assault. Albanian warriors lit torches simultaneously on both slopes, hundreds of flames blazing through the rain, creating an eerie, flickering hell that illuminated the killing ground. Then they charged down both slopes in a coordinated wave, screaming Skanderbeg's name, their war cries echoing between the cliffs. The sight and sound broke what remained of Ottoman morale. Soldiers who had fought bravely all day simply couldn't endure anymore. They threw down weapons and ran, scrambling over bodies and wreckage, seeking any escape from the nightmare. But there was no escape. The valley had become their tomb. Hamza, somewhere in that darkness and rain, made his final choice. Rather than face capture and the humiliation of begging mercy from the uncle he'd betrayed, he fought to the death. Accounts differ on exactly how he died. Some say Albanian cavalry cut him down, others that he was struck by arrows while trying to rally his guard. What's certain is that Hamza Castrioti, who had imagined glory and rewards, died anonymously in the mud of Albulena, one corpse among thousands. By dawn on September 3, the Battle of Albulena was over. The rain stopped, fog lifted, and what it revealed was almost beyond comprehension, a valley floor carpeted with dead and dying. Ottoman casualties were catastrophic. Estimates suggest 20,000 to 25,000 killed, perhaps another 10,000 wounded or captured, out of the 40,000 who had entered the valley. It was one of the worst military disasters in Ottoman history, over half their invasion force destroyed in less than 24 hours. Albanian casualties, by contrast, were remarkably light, perhaps 1,000 killed and wounded total. The numerical disparity in outcomes was almost unbelievable. A force one-fifth the size had inflicted casualties at a 25-to-1 ratio. Skanderbeg walked slowly through the aftermath, his face showing no triumph, only exhaustion. Around him, Albanian warriors gathered the wounded, both their own and enemy soldiers, because even in the aftermath of such violence, there was recognition that wounded men deserved mercy. The streams running through Albulena literally ran red with blood for days afterward. Local chroniclers wrote that you could walk across the valley floor, stepping only on corpses without touching earth. Abandoned Ottoman equipment littered the ground, weapons, armor, supplies, treasure intended to fund the occupation of conquered Albania. All of it now belonged to the Albanians. But the physical wreckage was nothing compared to the psychological impact. News of Albulena spread across the medieval world with shocking speed. In Venice, church bells rang in celebration. The Venetians had been Albania's sometime allies, and Skanderbeg's victory protected their Adriatic interests. In Rome, Pope Calixtus III declared a day of thanksgiving, calling Skanderbeg the athlete of Christ and the shield of Christendom. Across Christian Europe, the story was received as a miracle. The tiny Albanian nation had achieved what great kingdoms couldn't, stopping Ottoman expansion through pure courage and tactical genius. In Constantinople, the news was received in marble silence. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, the man who considered himself destined to rule all of Europe, learned that his massive invasion force had been annihilated by the Albanian rebel he'd dismissed as a dying threat. His reaction was reportedly controlled fury. He ordered that anyone who mentioned Albulena in his presence would be executed. The defeat didn't break the Ottoman Empire, they were far too powerful for that, but it left a psychological scar. The myth of Ottoman invincibility was damaged. European Christians who had been preparing for inevitable Ottoman conquest now saw that resistance was possible, that terrain and tactics could defeat superior numbers. For Albania, Albulena bought precious years of continued independence. The Ottomans would campaign again, but never with the same confidence, never with the assumption of easy victory. Skanderbeg had taught them that conquering Albania would be too costly, too difficult, requiring resources the empire needed elsewhere. He would continue fighting for another decade until his death in 1468, and even after his death, Albanian resistance continued for years. The complete Ottoman conquest of Albania wouldn't be achieved until 1479, over 35 years after Skanderbeg first raised the rebellion, and 22 years after Albulena proved that small nations with brilliant leadership and favorable terrain could defeat empires. The battle became legend in Albanian culture, the national epic, the moment when courage and tactical genius achieved the impossible. For centuries afterward, Albanian parents would tell children the story of how their ancestors defeated an army 5 times their size through preparation, patience, and perfect execution. Skanderbeg himself became an almost mythical figure, the dragon slayer, the Christian knight, the brilliant general who never lost when fighting on his own terms. Modern military academies still study Albulena as a masterclass in using terrain to negate numerical disadvantage, in preparing elaborate ambushes, in psychological warfare and morale destruction. The battle demonstrates principles that remain relevant. Preparation defeats improvisation, knowledge of terrain is force multiplier, and overconfidence is perhaps the most dangerous military weakness. The Ottomans entered that valley supremely confident, dismissive of their enemy, certain of victory. They left it as corpses or broken survivors who would never again underestimate Albanian warriors. Skanderbeg himself lived another 11 years after Albulena, continuing to defend Albania until his death from fever in 1468 at age 63. His funeral was attended by representatives from across Christian Europe, acknowledging that he had been more than a local hero. He had been a continental shield, the man who held back Ottoman expansion when others couldn't or wouldn't. After his death, the Ottomans finally conquered Albania, but they never forgot the cost. Albanian resistance had delayed Ottoman expansion into Western Europe by decades, buying time for other Christian states to prepare defenses, and perhaps most importantly, proving that the empire was not invincible, that determined resistance could succeed. The Battle of Albulena stands as testament to what brilliant tactical planning and courageous execution can achieve against overwhelming odds. 8,000 men destroyed 40,000 through perfect use of terrain, meticulous preparation, and the kind of tactical genius that appears perhaps once in a generation. It reminds us that in warfare, and perhaps in life, victory belongs not always to the largest or strongest, but to those who prepare best, fight smartest, and refuse to accept defeat as inevitable. Now you've witnessed one of medieval history's most perfectly executed ambushes. The day mountains became weapons, and 8,000 warriors destroyed an empire's invasion force through tactical brilliance that still amazes military scholars today. If this story of perfect preparation meeting overconfident power fascinates you, if you want to explore more battles where terrain, tactics, and courage defeated overwhelming numbers, then subscribe to Flow of History right now. We bring you history's most dramatic military turning points, from medieval ambushes to ancient stratagems, from legendary commanders to ordinary soldiers who achieved extraordinary victories. These aren't just historical battles. They're lessons in how preparation, knowledge, and courage can overcome any advantage in numbers or equipment. Join us as we uncover the tactical genius behind history's greatest upsets. Hit subscribe for Flow of History, because more incredible tales of impossible victories await, and you won't want to miss what comes next.